Okay, the first thing we're going to do for Unit 3.6 is look at aggregate supply and aggregate demand. This is a little bit of a review because we did aggregate demand and aggregate supply when we had them on their own. So remember, everything's going to start off right here. Anytime you see equilibrium or long run equilibrium, you're going to have all three of them crossing right here. So YF is full employment, price is price level, that's where we're at right now in the economy. So right now, buyers, sellers, long run structure, employment, everything is happy and functioning. What we're going to look at, though, to start off with, is aggregate demand and what they call positive shocks. So anytime we have a positive shock, what that's going to be is anything that's going to shift aggregate demand to the right. So what we want to know is what happens to price level and inflation and GDP and unemployment. So these positive shocks or changes to aggregate demand, our examples are going to be if we have investment decreased by businesses, if we have government job programs, or if we have domestic goods prices going up. So those three things we can look at as examples. And what I want to look at, or what I want to show you first, is the one about investment going down by a business. So let's say businesses are no longer investing. So it's either going to be due to the interest rate rising, price levels rising, whatever it would be. So if the investment of businesses go down, remember that's part of Sig X. So if any one of those changes, and I didn't mean to put an arrow, it's not decreasing. Remember that equals to aggregate demand. So if our investment is decreasing, aggregate demand would be decreasing. So what we're going to do right there is shift this to the left. Now what I want to focus on today is telling the story. So the story is, you're going to see things like, what happens to unemployment? What happens to inflation? So if they ask, or what happens to GDP? All those things are going to be asked in kind of a multiple choice situation or an FRQ. So this is what I always told y'all. This is the story. This is how things are answered. So I know that aggregate demand is going to decrease because a component of Sig X is decreased. That means investment. That means businesses aren't buying any capital. There's no capital formation. Capital stock is decreasing, whatever. Okay, but this is all short run. Okay, these are all things that happen in the short run. Long run adjustments we're going to do later today. So right here, aggregate demand is going to shift to the left. We're going to have GDP decreasing. Therefore, unemployment goes up. Because when we move our output to the left or shift it, GDP is associated to unemployment. So no, unemployment will go up. What's going to happen to inflation or price level? Well, same amount of supply, less demand. So price level drops, and therefore inflation decreases. Now, what's going to happen to our GDP? Well, output, GDP, whatever you call it, production, all those things are going to decrease if we have a negative demand shock. Okay. The next one on the list, or my examples for today, what if we have a government jobs program? So the government enacts a jobs program, kind of like New Deal, something like that. I know that that's going to be government spending. So now we have Sig X again equals AD. So now I see that government spending increase, so aggregate demand is going to increase. Then what is going to happen? Same thing. In the short run, what happens to unemployment, inflation, GDP? Well, let's look at our story. Aggregate demand shifts to the right. This is our new short run equilibrium. So anything that is to the right or left of long run is going to be short run equilibrium. So then once again, GDP goes up. So we have jobs. That means unemployment goes down. Price level goes up, and because we employ more resources to meet this new production and demand. So now price level, inflation goes up. That's our answer for those. Now our third situation is what happens if we have domestic good prices increase. So that means things at home, our factories. So domestic goods price goes up. So if that happens, well, we're going to buy stuff from other countries, aren't we? So our exports would go down and our imports would go up. If our equation for net exports is X minus M, what happens to net exports? Well, that's going to decrease. And of course, that is part of Sig X. So I know this is going to decrease, this is going to decrease. And once again, there's my story. Okay, GDP decrease, that means unemployment. Price level decrease, that means inflation goes down. Okay, so output, production, all those things. Awesome. So pause this anywhere you need, rewind, and that'll help you solve topic questions 3.6.